besides church, what is homecoming? Where do we have homecoming? What can you think of that has homecoming?
High school.
What?
High school.
High school, even college. Football, teams, playing, contests. And if you go to homecoming, even if you don't, but usually you'll go if you're like a really massive fan of your team, right? My high school was West Covina High School, and when I went to high school, we were the West Covina High School Spartans. Now, since then, they've made a terrible decision, and they've changed that to the Bulldogs. Now, I love dogs. The reason they did that was they merged with another high school, and they were the Trojans. So they decided to pick a non-controversial mascot, so it wouldn't be that we got to keep the Spartans, and they were our crosstown rival, the ones that merged. Anyway, so my class of the year are big fans of our teams and stuff. Some of our guys went on to be the stars at USC and things like that. There's a whole bunch of my class of West Covina Spartans that are planning to go to their homecoming game on October 16th, and they're going to have a big cookout on the track before the game and all. They are fans, right? Fans. But there's a difference between a fan and a follower. And that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. A fan, if you're a fan of Jesus, yay Jesus, yay God, hooray, that's great. But if you don't follow God or be a disciple and follow the teachings and spread those teachings and that love, then you're just a fan. You're watching from the couch or the TV or from the track barbecue. But you're not getting in there and playing the game with the team. So, that was about my children's story. Let's be followers, not just fans. Okay? All right. So, we are now going to sing our anthem called The Gift of Love by Hal Hobson. Some of you will recognize this tune as an old folk tune called Wally Wally. going to stand together now and sing our Gloria, which is going to prepare us for the hearing of the Scripture. So let us hear. Glory to the Creator, the Christ, the Holy Spirit, three in one, as it was in the beginning, is now and ever shall be. Glory, Father. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Please be seated.
Our reading this morning from the Old Testament is from Proverbs 1:20 through 33. Wisdom cries out in the street, in the square she raises her voice. At the busiest corner she cries out, at the entrance of the city gates she speaks. How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing and fools hate knowledge? Give heed to my reproof. I will pour out my thoughts to you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you refused, have stretched out my hand and no one heeded, and because you have ignored all my counsel and would have none of my reproof, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when panic strikes you. When panic strikes you like a storm, and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. Then they will call upon me, and I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me. Because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, would have none of my counsel, and despised all my reproof. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way and be sated with their own devices. For waywardness kills the simple, and the complexity of fools destroys them. And those who listen to me will be secure and will live at ease without dread of disaster.
So for the past 2 weeks, I've been reading from the book of James, and I've been calling it the Gospel of James, which is incorrect. Yay, seminarian. I'll be reading from the Epistle of James, 3:1 through 12. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For all of us make many mistakes. Anyone who makes no mistakes in speaking is perfect, able to speak the whole body in check with a bridle. If we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide their whole bodies. Or look at ships. Though they are so large that it takes strong winds to drive them, yet they are guided by a very small rudder. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. How great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue is placed among our members as a world of iniquity. It stings the whole body, sets on fire the cycle of nature, and it is itself set on fire by hell. For every species of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by the human species. But no one can tame the tongue, a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessings and cursings. My brothers and sisters, this ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and brackish water? Can a fig tree, my brothers and sisters, yield olives and grape? No more can salt water yield fresh.
Our gospel reading this morning is from the Gospel of Mark, the 8th chapter, the 27th through 38th verses. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist," and others, "Elijah," and still others, "one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all of this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." May we hear and understand what the Spirit is teaching us. Oops. We're really having trouble with this today. Darn it. PowerPoint? This is exciting, isn't it? It certainly does. Well, I don't need technology for the sermon. All right. You want one of these to play with up there?
No, just.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joshua. All right. Now, I did need something that I ran off to get and couldn't find. So you'll have to put up with something a little strange in about 20 seconds. Anyway, welcome to Wonder and Mystery. Today we want to welcome wisdom into our lives and into our very beings as we begin a new year here at Bethel. And now I'm going to do the strange thing, because somewhere in this building is my shofar, but I can't find it. I went wandering all about while Virginia read Proverbs. However, I want you to hear a lovely call, so I'm going to see if my hand can pretend to be a ram's horn. So you have to see a ram's horn like this. It goes. That was probably better than if I tried to do that on the shofar. Anyway, I did practice it. So, I practiced it and then I put it down. If you see a ram's horn, it's fine. Okay. Anyway, here is a mystery. This is a mystery I learned from a rabbi. Rosh Hashanah is not just a Jewish holiday. Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of humankind. So one mystery closes and another mystery opens. If you were to look through the entire book of high holiday prayers, I tried, you would not find any mention of Adam's birth. And most of us think, okay, creating Adam is the creation of humankind. What you would find is the repeated statement, today is the birthday of the world. Today is the birthday of the world. You would find that in lots of places. You would also find kind of an enigmatic phrase. This day is the beginning of your works, a remembrance of the first day. So that's kind of a fascinating thought. Probably one a lot of modern scientists would embrace, being that this seems to indicate that the cosmos was born only when Adam opened his eyes to observe and name each thing. I mean, after all, don't the quantum physicists and cosmologists of today tell us that there can be no events, no universe without an observer? The universe begins then with the creation of the first human consciousness. He blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and Adam became a living being. It reminds me of the story about if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, does it make a noise? And no observer, does it really happen? Good question. Well, all of that is fascinating, but not quite satisfactory, because in fact, the book of Genesis says Adam was formed on the sixth day of creation. Most of you know me well, and you know that I think that a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day, and that the sixth day to me does not mean 6 24-hour days. It means a sixth something of creation, a sixth section of God's periods of time, because I don't believe that we can define God's days. Anyway, since Adam was born on the sixth day, that means there was a world before. Granted, very different one than the one we know of. One in which matter, energy, time, and space came into being, took form from chaos, and in which events occurred at a somewhat rapid rate, really. I mean, I get all sorts of things that I read that tell me whether we've been here for millions of years or thousands of years, and I decided I wasn't going to worry about it. Anyway, events evolved, and the simple evolved to the complex. But it was a world, nevertheless, before Adam, before human beings. Why then, goes the classic question, does Rosh Hashanah commemorate the birthday of Adam, of humankind? Why is it not the 6 days earlier? Good question. The classic response is because we're really not celebrating an anniversary. When they're doing that, today is the birthday of the world means this. Today, now, right this instant, the world is born again. Today is the beginning of your works. You know how we always have today is a new day. Start a new day. It's that kind of a thing, but much more profound. It is the beginning of your works. It's reminiscent of the very first time the world was made. The first time, of course, it was a free gift. Now, it kind of depends on us, doesn't it? This global warming thing kind of hits us right there. So, Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of humankind, our birthday. We are reborn, and with us, the entire cosmos. There is a facet in Rosh Hashanah that reminds us of something. It is called Tikkun Olam. It is a Hebrew phrase that means repairing the world, or healing the world, or completing the world. It suggests our responsibility to heal, repair, and transform the world. It is a concept of our task to finish building the world. So what has all of that got to do with us here at Bethel, with our homecoming? I am not a rabbi. We are not a synagogue. But we have this lesson from the High Holy Days, from Rosh Hashanah. We have this lesson that we can learn from almost every culture that has a similar festival or a similar part of their year that they celebrate. Sometimes for us, it's the beginning of the school year. For us today, it's the beginning of the new church year. Our readings today, even though they weren't about Adam, and not in one reading were the words Rosh Hashanah spoken, there are many things that can help us understand our task, our birthday task, our new task, our healing task, our repairing task, our task right here at Bethel in our community to heal our community and our world. First today, we heard in our readings about wisdom, portrayed in Proverbs as a woman shouting at passersby on a busy street corner. What was she saying? How long will you love being simple? When will you stop scoffing at the educated, the intellectuals, the ones with knowledge? That's what she thinks is so urgent. It's kind of an important subject to broach. There's an awful lot of documentation about the record of anti-intellectualism woven into the fabric of our history and culture. There was a very old study in which a man named Richard Hofstadter, 1963, called this feature of American life resentment of the life of the mind and those who are considered to represent it, and a disposition to constantly minimize the value of that life. Another definition is hostility and mistrust of intellect, intellectuals, and intellectual pursuits, usually expressed as the derision of education, philosophy, literature, art, and science as being impractical and contemptible. However we define it, there can be very little doubt that in some areas of American life, even of the world life, it is a pervasive component. No wonder James says, be careful if you're going to be a teacher. Watch out. There was a study, it's called a Pew study, in which we found out, this was 2014, by the way, just a year ago, so it's not 1963. Only 29% of Americans regularly read the newspaper. And perhaps even more alarming, only 42% of college graduates, I'm a college graduate, college graduates ever read another book after graduation. And 80% of American families didn't purchase a single book in the last year. While it's clear from that research that people with higher levels of income and education are more likely to read than those without, the fact is many Americans, educated and uneducated, are certainly not pursuing a life of the mind. Honestly, we encourage you here, and God encourages you to use your mind. It is a gift of God. Learn things, do things, teach things, be things. One of the sad things that many people believe is a result of the sort of anti-learning environment in America, I hesitate to use the term anti-intellectualism, big words. Anyway, that one of the problems with that means that we have an escalation of ignorance and gullibility. We have an escalation of people being ready to believe whatever someone tells them if it seems like something they want to believe. Many people credit the growth exponentially, the growth of gun violence and things like that, to the lack of education and respect for wisdom. Anyway, got off on a tangent there a little bit, but wisdom is important. And if someone is offering you a gift of wisdom, take it and share it. I mean, Lady Wisdom basically suggests that ignorance leads to panic, which is followed by calamity. She associated the hatred of knowledge with failing to choose the fear of the Lord. Fear meaning awe and respect. The refusal of her wise counsel, according to Proverbs, results in destruction and disaster. What of James? The Epistle of James. Yay, Josh. Epistle of James. James cautions teachers. Every word uttered by a person in power, whether it be from a pulpit, a town hall meeting, a lecture class, and make no mistake about it, each of you, when you speak to someone, sharing information, you are a person in power. Every word spoken or written, shared on Facebook, Twitter, private email, in a lecture, in a conversation over dinner, everything can become the subject of idle gossip or even national media. We really have to be diligent about watching what we say, lest it be misunderstood, misinterpreted, misquoted, or misconstrued. I'm sure all of us have had that happen with a text. It's pretty hard to communicate your real emotion and intention sometimes if you're just sending a text message. Bring me some food. Sounds like a command. I'm just like, I'm really hurting. Could you please help me out and bring me some food? I'm not saying that because anybody did that. They asked nicely. Yeah, but you know, things like that happen. The tongue does indeed wield much power. It wields as much power as the sword, and sometimes even more. There is a list which I try to pay attention to. It is published by the Lewis Center for Church Leadership. It is a helpful set of reminders. And I think that it doesn't need to just go to pastors and seminarians, but to all of us. Be proactive rather than reactive. People will forgive almost anything if you admit your mistakes, apologize, and ask forgiveness. Think before you speak or act. Practice what you preach. Remember, the church is not about you. Get yourself out of the way and focus on the love of God. Take the high road. Rely on a few trusted friends to be a reality check and hold you accountable. Pay attention to your spirit and take care of yourself. Of course, there are times when all of us says or writes something that we really wish we hadn't. For all make many mistakes, as James put it in the second verse of chapter 3. Thank goodness we serve a God of grace. But at the same time, it never hurts to be reminded of the power of our own tongues. This small organ can do so much damage in so little time. We need to be aware of that power and use it, as James suggests, to guide not only the actions of our bodies, but to bless the people around us. There's an old saying, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. In other words, our tongues can be used to bless just as easily as they can be used to curse. Let us pray that the words that spring forth from our mouths are more often that fresh water, not the brackish type. And what about Mark and his chat with his disciples? Well, what I got out of that this week, I get many things in different weeks, is that being a Christian or a follower of God, being that person is a two-step process. The first is to recognize that we are acceptable to be that follower, to be that disciple. That's the time when we celebrate the good news of God's grace. That's the time when we celebrate God's acceptance of us and God's forgiveness of whatever our flaws may be. And here, for us in Bethel and UCC, that is called a sacrament and it is called baptism. For us, that really is only the first step, though. The second is actually claiming that for ourselves. Who do you say that I am? Said Jesus. They can follow him all they want, but until they say, this is what I believe, I am to follow the grace of God and to share the love of God. For some people, the second step is gradual. They may grow up in church. They may just grow into it. For other people, it's a big, giant event. For some young people, sometimes that actually happens at confirmation. For other people, it's more like Paul on the road to Damascus being struck blind. But it doesn't matter whether you went to the Billy Graham crusade or whether you were on a walk in the hills. When you start to see that you have the power to make changes and to be a leader for God, when that happens, we respond, and we respond in grace, and we stop focusing just on ourselves. Instead, we begin to start caring and loving others as well. We begin following Christ. We begin actually following that lead and taking those same footsteps that he took. In our story in Mark, Magic Mike? No, Mark. Jesus got his conversation going by asking the disciples what everybody was saying about him. What are they talking about? You're out there with the people. Tell me what they say. And they talk about John the Baptist, Elijah, big important people. In my music world, well, you're Beethoven reincarnated. Anyway. But Jesus says, well, yeah, okay, good. But what about you guys now? You're my closest followers. What do you believe? And of course, Peter says that he's the Messiah. After that declaration is when Jesus begins to teach them about what's going to be happening with him, about being rejected, and that may mean the same for them, that they may not always be accepted for what they are. Here's kind of a bit of paraphrase. You think that the way to be happy is to win the approval of other people. But the way to true happiness, to true self-fulfillment, is not through self-gratification. The way to happiness is the way of the cross. He's speaking of his own cross. The verse about take up your cross and follow me. The way to fulfillment is not by saving your own life, but by saving the lives of your neighbors. He says, I will suffer and be rejected, and if you want to follow me, you've got to be ready to do the same. You've got to quit thinking about what will make you happy and start thinking about how you can give yourself to other people. You've got to get yourself out of the way as the center of your life and the center of your love. You've got to deny yourself and follow me. If you truly believe I am the Messiah, make following me the center of your life. If you truly believe it's important to follow God and the Holy Spirit, make that the center of your life. Make loving me the focus of your soul. Because if you keep focusing just on yourself and measure your success by worldly definitions, you might get approval of some other people, but you will lose your soul in the process. The reason I continue to be part of the Christian church, with all of its flaws, with all of the things I become disgusted about, that I see people claiming and proclaiming in the name of Christianity, that, as far as I'm concerned, are just plain wrong. The reason I continue is because of the idea of following Christ, of following God, And the Christian church, if I can find one that helps, that's the place where that's going to be taught, where that's going to be perpetuated. That is the place where I can surround myself with people who are committed to learning and growing in God. I've learned that the more I focus on that mission, on following God, Jesus, listening to the Holy Spirit, however big and huge and awesome that is, the more I focus on that, on trying to look at the tales of Jesus' life and be like him, and the less I focus on myself, the more I actually like and am able to accept who I am down deep in my soul. Our self-help culture tells us that the way to be happy is to love ourselves and focus on doing what we most want. Christ told us here the way to be happy is to deny ourselves and take up that cross. It calls us to focus on that message. In truth, when we actually focus on God, Christ, the Holy Spirit, that is when we are focusing most on what our souls and our true selves need. I want to return a bit to where I began with the mystery, the lessons we can learn from Rosh Hashanah. Here's the thing. The entire cosmos is on life support. Like the glowing phosphors that form characters on a screen, life like holographic images, like Star Wars. Pull the plug and the whole thing vanishes without a trace. My rabbi friend says, were God to pull the plug on his creation, God forbid, space itself would vanish. Even time would be annulled. The world would never have existed, no history. It would all be erased. Nothing. Not even a read-only memory. Wrong for those computer geeks among you. I really liked the way he said that. There really is not a particle of the universe that simply sustains itself. With every moment, the universe and each thing within it pulsates with the vital energy that gives it being. Our planet, Earth, is a clock to the rhythm by which that energy throbs. A cycle of moments, days, months, years. Each moment, the life needed from that moment emerges, is absorbed, and then returns to its source. Each day, the energy for that day. Each month, the energy for that month. Here's the name in Hebrew for month, I think. I might mispronounce it, I'm sorry. Chodesh. It means renewal. My friend says, but the most important renewal of life is that which occurs on Rosh Hashanah, because that is when all life of the previous year returns to its essential source, and a new life, such as never was known before, emerges from the void to sustain existence for an entire year. Don't you think that's a little strange? That a created being should take part in its own creation? It sounds a little strange. Think about cartoon characters participating with the artists in their own design. I saw a movie like that once, where they reached up with the pencil and helped draw themselves. You know, they're pleading with the broadcasting company for airtime in the coming season. Imagine the figments of your own imagination telling you what to imagine. Now imagine yourselves, created beings, pleading with the Creator. Grant us life, good life, nice things. Get more deeply involved with your world. Fix it for us. At the same time, God pleads with us. Repair the world. Complete the creation. Do my work. Now here's something that those of you that are into electricity will understand. The electricians or semi-electricians among you. The spark of God within us connects with the infinite light of God above. The circuit is complete, and the universe is rebooted with a flow of energy for the entire year. Our lesson: complete that circuit. Share that energy. Turn on your switch. Repair the world. Do the work. Listen to wisdom. Act in wisdom and in love. That's our task here. We're in a new year. We got a lot of new stuff. We have a fantastic history. And it's new again. It's time to complete the creation. It's time to do the work. Amen.